Hello, coming up on today's episode of The Mum Show, we are talking about raising our girls to be empowered to be all that God has created and called them to be. So get yourselves comfortable, grab a cup of tea, and let's start the show. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Mum Show. My name's Marina, and joining me in The Mum Show today, I've got Pastor Claire Hooper and child therapist Emma Brown. And we've looked already on this series about raising boys. So today we're going to have a little look at what it means to raise girls. How can we raise girls that are empowered and passionate and loving, but most importantly, all that God has created them to be? Big topic for us to chat through, but I'm so excited because I've worked out that between us we have 4 daughters.
Wow.
That's some maths you did there.
have.
Yeah, I know. 2 add 1. It took me about half an hour, but we got there. I had a chalkboard and everything. So we've got 4 daughters, and I think that I was trying to have a think to myself, how would we brand the 4 of them, but they are so different.
Oh yeah, so different.
Like all 4 of our girls, even you've got obviously 2 girls, but they are nothing alike.
They are chalk and cheese.
They really are. There's things that I can say, my daughter is a typical girlin, so she can get comfortable in any space. She likes to nibble and munch food and be comfortable and watch television for long periods of time, where her brother would be more up and about. She sings constantly. She wants to talk to everybody and have lots of conversations. She even likes knitting.
Wow.
She should be my child.
I know.
Yeah, you like knitting, don't you,
I
Claire?
love all things crafty.
I know. I just wish you would have her more, frankly. But she likes knitting. She likes baking. She likes cooking. She likes things that we wouldn't necessarily today consider traditional girly stuff. But she's into all of that. But then she also likes football. She likes mud. She likes pretending. She once said to me that when she grows up, she was going to become a criminal, which was interesting. Brilliant. I think she was about 5 at the time. When I grow up, I think I'll be a criminal. I was like, right. Let's talk about that. So there is nothing, I just find it funny to even consider categorising girlhood. It's just a funny thing, isn't it?
It is crazy. I think because I'm the only one with 2 girls, and I think when I was pregnant with my second girl, Erin, I kind of assumed, I've got this in the bag. I've done this once before.
I know. Never say
I know
that.
what's coming, and I honestly have never. I think that it was probably the biggest shock in my life having my second daughter because of how different she was. I'd probably, I don't like labelling our children, and we talk a lot about this on this show about trying not to label them. But I think, it's important to kind of know their strengths and their characters, isn't it? And my eldest is kind of really laid back. She's kind of often got her head in the clouds, but she's also very self-motivated and very internally driven. Whereas my youngest is much more relational, so she's much more kind of in tune with other people in the outside world and more influenced by her peer group potentially as well. So it's funny.
My Gracie, she's so resourceful, and she wants to just be the boss of something and be in charge. When she was little, she was a very little person. I know they're all little people, but she was a little person, but she had this commanding voice. In fact, we were in the swimming pool once and somebody said, "Oh, your little girl's got a very high-pitched, loud voice." I was like, yes, I know. But you would find her as happily, mostly in the mud kitchen, or when we used to keep chickens when my kids were little. I was that family, with chickens and ducks. In a princess dress, in clip-clop high heels, in the bottom of the muddy garden, holding a chicken. That was like her life. She constantly wore pearls and dresses, but she would be in the mud kitchen at the same time. It's like, well, why can't you have both?
Yeah, the princess pirate. My daughter was always in wellies in a tutu. Always wellies in a tutu.
Yeah, I love that look.
Yeah, I do. I love the celebration of girlhood and the fact that actually we're moving more into a time, aren't we, where girls are allowed to explore more. They don't have to be so formal. They're allowed to develop who they are. And I think people are getting used to opinionated girls more as well. That it's not seen as such a a downfall, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's when I've kind of been thinking about this topic and particularly where my girls are at developmentally, you know, kind of one well into teenagehood and the other one just about to kind of head down that road. I think the picture is very complicated, because I think we get this massive message at the moment of empowerment of women, you know, equal rights, you know, women should be paid just for the same job the same way as men, and there's real kind of push, and you know, social media have a big part to play in that, don't they, of kind of empowering women and girls. But I can't quite work that out when at the same time we are seeing the highest rates of anxiety and depression in young women and young girls that we've ever seen. It's tripled. Rates of anxiety and depression have tripled in the last 5 years in females.
Gosh,
males as well, but
statistic.
particularly girls as well.
When you think, I often think to myself, if you've got a pressure to grow up to have the big career because women died for your career, and you have the pressure to grow up and be beautiful and be so emancipated and so free, actually that's like huge pressure of, what if I want to be a stay-at-home mum? Or what if actually I just want a really simple life? Or what if I don't want to be this symbol of power and womanhood, but I just want to kind of exist? And I do feel as well, sometimes you often see a line crossed where, to me, that is an adult issue. That you see children, and unfortunately it's often used where you see propaganda with young children being used to propagate the message of women empowerment. But the concern to me is that actually that is not a childhood issue. We create a world, we do that kind of that empowerment so that our children can rise into that and they can continue that on.
It confuses me because although I really want to see my children live as individuals, of course I do. It's like Christ knows us as individuals, you know, but there's something in a drive in our culture that says you can be whatever you want to be, and it's actually unlimited, and I think it's very confusing, especially when you look at the word, it talks about us being like Christ and actually being imitators of Christ and reflecting God to the world. Those two things to me just don't match up. Be whatever you want to be, but it just doesn't match up. I think we're supposed to be like Christ first, and in us reflecting Christ, we learn our individuality. Not you can be whatever you want, whatever label you want, whatever, everything. You know, it's just too broad. We have to bring it back down for our girls, and then from that basis of knowing who they are in Christ, building them back up to be a strength and a source of strength.
Yeah, I love that. Should we head over, because I've interviewed some lovely girls to talk about girlhood. So let's listen to what they have to say. We'll tune in now to the Kids VT.
Okay, kids, action! Being a girl, it's always like really fun, but you can be expected to have lots of responsibilities, and many girls are expected to like pink or be girly, but any girl can be whatever they want. But it has happened like in history as well, that boys were treated better than girls because they thought boys were like stronger than girls, but actually girls can do just as good as boys, and it's really good. It's really fun being a good girl, and it's just great. I think
we did a fashion show last time.
Yeah, we did fashion shows and stuff like that, and we all went shopping, and that was also really fun. It was fun because we all got together and we looked around the shops and we like had a fun time when we were just like messing about and stuff.
Tell me, what's the good thing about hanging out with friends that are girls?
Hanging out with friends that are girls, you can feel like being yourself and you don't have to be anyone else. You can just have fun and just do what you want, and they understand you because they're the same, so they understand everything, and so it's really nice having friends that are close. And
what do you think girls your age are into?
I think girls my age like makeup and being with their friends.
And also doing lots of sports, like lots of girls in my class play football and rugby and basketball. They all like different things, and that's a good thing about being a girl, you don't just have to like one thing.
What do you think is something tricky about being a girl?
Some certain sports, mainly people think that boys do it.
Yeah.
Like at my football club, there's like only one girl and me. But actually, I was really good at football. I got mainly all the goals.
I think one of the challenges girls face is being pressurised about what they look like and what clothes they wear, and they think people might judge them depending on what clothes they wear.
Not just by their friends and stuff at school, but also like on the internet, because in photos YouTubers always look like perfect and stuff.
Tell us about who inspires you and why.
Well, I'm inspired by two people. One of them is Sophia Grace. She's 14 and she's a singer, and she got famous by this YouTube video that she posted when she was really young, and now she's really famous. She's got like albums and stuff. And the second one is Zoella. She's another YouTuber, and she's got anxiety stuff. She's really strong there, and so she's always like telling girls like how they can like go through these things that are like difficult. I think I look up to Emma Watson because she's a really good actress, and she started from a young age on Harry Potter, and I would really love to be like her. And also now she's a great feminist and she fights for women's rights.
My mummy inspires me because I want to be an artist, and I like all her doodles that she does.
Do you know what I do love though is girls have a great solidarity.
Yeah.
Female relationships work, they really work. Like when they go wrong, they go very wrong.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when we've talked about problems in the past and we talk about kids, we'll often refer to, if we ever talk about a friendship issue, we always use she. We always say she and the girls. We never ever talk about that with boys because they're so relational, aren't they? But when it works, it really works, and it's so sensory, isn't it? We do fashion shows together, we did makeup together, we went shopping together, we tasted, we touched, we hugged, we saw, and it's colour, and it's
experiential.
It is just such a sensory kind of connection that girls are amazing at making.
Absolutely. But I love the fact that Lilia's role model is her mum. Because I think sometimes that we forget that, don't we? Particularly at that kind of age, that pre-teen age, where they're starting to be much more kind of looking towards their peer group for their influences, and of course, you know, the internet as well. But I think we forget that actually us mums are our daughter's biggest role model, even when we don't think that. There was a survey done very recently, and actually 63% of they surveyed thousands of teenage girls, and 63% their role model was their mother, which I think actually in this day and age is really significant. So we've got to remember that. And one thing that I'm really conscious about is kind of body image. Body image is huge, isn't it?
Massive.
The kind of the media onslaught to our children at such a young age, because these kids are they're on the internet, aren't they?
Yeah, but even like on the channels and the TV programmes they watch, even the young stars that they're watching.
Absolutely, they all present this kind of perfect image of what
You don't even have to tune in, you just have to live in the world and see billboards.
Yeah.
You just have to walk down and see advertising and newspapers and magazines. Unless you are completely disconnected from everything, there are visual images everywhere.
And we know what that's like as women, you know, hopefully kind of thoughtful and insightful women. I know how I can still be affected by the images that I see and the hang-ups that I have. And all of us as women, it's, you know, I don't think I've met a woman yet who hasn't had a bit of a hang-up about a part of their body.
Yeah.
So it is normal, but I think we've got to be really mindful about how we talk about that in front of our daughters. I think there's nothing worse than kind of being able to, you know, often we hear, I need to go on a diet, I'm really, you know, I don't feel good about myself at the moment, I hate this, I hate that. And our children are listening to that. I think we've got to be really, really thoughtful about how we present.
Absolutely.
It's
really funny because my mum, she's rubbish at drawing, like she really is. She's got terrible handwriting as well. And she used to vocalise that because it's true. And I don't think I don't think she vocalised it massively self-deprecating, because it wasn't any value to her. So it wasn't like saying, oh, my handwriting's terrible, was something that she'd go and cry about at night, because she really couldn't care less that she's rubbish at drawing and has scrappy handwriting. But actually, for me, I totally took on that understanding that I would have bad handwriting and I would be bad at art. And I remember in my head when I readjusted that, because people would start saying to me, oh, you have amazing handwriting. I love handwriting and I love doodling. And so I practice and do it all day long. Like if I'm on the phone or talking to someone, it's the very thing that I do. And my dad has amazing handwriting, and it's very crafted, and he'll do it for, you know, he'll put loads of effort into doing a handwritten letter or something like that. But I hadn't picked that off my dad because I was my mum.
Yeah.
So I hadn't.
I didn't identify that. I really like my dad in lots of ways. But I remember watching to see how I identified with my mum. I mean, she did a great job, but that's just one of those things that springs to mind where I think, yeah, actually, I decided to identify that I must be the same as you. And so like you're saying with body image, it's so important.
It's why we have to teach our girls what they're on the planet for.
Yeah,
God's really clear about what women are here for. You don't have to root very far. The unfortunate thing is that the word that we conjure up in our mind that we think we're on as a Christian doesn't quite fit with this empower women, we want to live strong, and yet there's this driving need in us to be strong and, you know, courageous, but we have this word, and it's interesting because I went to a youth camp recently where I spoke at a youth camp, and I did a girls' session. So this is, bearing in mind, 11 to 16-year-olds. And I said to them, and I read them out the scripture in the very beginning, that God created man and, you know, Adam and Eve, and then the woman. And then he said, and man was not okay to be on his own, and he created a helper for him. Now, in actual fact, it's not clear as to how soon all that happened, but I said, what do you think about the word helper? What do you think it means? All across the room, they all said maid, servant, somebody in the background. And I'm like, yeah, because that word helper in our modern day language means that. But that's not the root of that word. It actually means to be a powerful source of strength to help mankind.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know. Do you know it's only used, that word, the root word, to describe God and Holy Spirit's gift to the world, when it's a powerful source of strength. And so if we in the church aren't getting a hold of that and changing around that thought process, it's why there's a drive for women, because we are a powerful source of strength. It's why we drive ourselves sometimes into movements where maybe we're like, we're better than this, we know we don't need your help, whoever it is, we can do this on our own, we're independent, we're strong. It's why then God then takes us to the end, and when we get to Ephesians and it talks about the model of being husband and wife, he says to women, okay, submit to your husbands. Now, again, we use that word as submit. We think it's like I must bow down. I ask the girls, what do they think? Bow down, be a servant. I'm like, no, it means to lay down your arms, to bend down on your knee and use your strength in service. It's totally different. Totally different, like, perspective on. So you take them back to the beginning. We need to teach our girls that they are a powerful source of strength, but to use that strength for good.
And I think that's what I find when you consider, what am I raising my children for? What am I raising these girls for? And through the process of doing the Mum Show, I've met a lot of children for these kids' videos that we show. And with that, I've met a lot of mums. And I have had story after story after story. I just have this lovely time with their parents of how women have fought through a son's suicide, thoughts of suicide, of how she is fought through in prayer, of women who have stood through husbands who have been in absolute terrible places, or who have had affairs, or all these different things, and they have fought through for restoration. I've spoken to women who have had children with really big illnesses or difficulties or disabilities, and how they have been that powerful source of strength in those situations. And it's the most humbling experience, because what overwhelming message I got from that, what I really believed God was saying to me was, look, this isn't for a few women, this is womanhood, this is what I've made. I have created a powerful source of strength. My concern is that when we don't use that as God intended, that powerful source of strength can cause separation. And all of a sudden, that separation, nobody benefits from that, because we already know from what we chatted about with the boys that male suicide and male depression anxiety is high. So we separate. No, you're going for this powerful, empowered way, and it's all about you. The separation concerns me. But also what you're saying, Emma, is how that powerful source of strength, if it's not positive, it can tear down. It can tear down yourself. It can tear down relationships at some force.
Yeah, Absolutely, but I do think that there are so much that we can do as parents, hasn't they? Going back to the, Lilia saying, my mum is my role model, and it's not just about how we present ourselves as parents and and women, and how we have learnt to kind of understand what that really means to be that powerful source of strength. But it's also how we the more practical things of what we can put in place to kind of really help our girls. And actually, it's not just mothers. It's not just it's us as mothers. It's, fathers have a real important role with their daughters,
isn't it?
My feeling is that actually, in terms of self-esteem, what a father says to her daughter is almost more significant.
I found that definitely with Gracie.
Yeah,
definitely.
and I, from my experience as well, my dad had 3 daughters, but I remember if he said something that was, maybe, I don't know, commented on my weight, for example, in a kind of even in a jokey way. That would be, oh my goodness, that's. But if he built me up, if he said something encouragement, I would be holding on to those words. So true. Because I think how fathers, the relationship that fathers have with their daughters is incredibly important, and it has to start really early, because if it doesn't start early, then there's this period of time, particularly during the teenage years, where it can be a bit tricky between fathers and daughters. I know that my husband at the moment has, he says, I'm so grateful that I was so hands-on and have such a solid relationship with the girls, because actually this bit is really tricky for me. This bit of their bodies changing, their interests changing, their interactions changing, they're much more self-conscious as they used to. He said if I didn't have that kind of really solid foundation, he would find this time really a real struggle.
Don't you find that relationship though between your earthly father and you, or the earthly father and the child, is very correlated to how our heavenly Father treats us? And when we have that example, he reassures us that the protection, the security, the safety, that's why self-esteem, because self-esteem's so built around that, isn't it? And we've got a whole episode on self-esteem, but so built around that feeling secure and safe and in that environment.
So vital relationship. To allow that relationship to develop, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it is a bit like the blueprint for what our daughters are going to expect.
That is so true, because I'm one of 4
what
girls.
They reach for in a relationship.
I'm one of 4 girls, and people used to say all the time, the Smith girls won't go out with anyone, we won't have a boyfriend because no one's good enough. And I used to think, but you're not. You're not good enough. Like, I just don't think that you're not quite there yet, and I just wasn't interested. And it wasn't until I became a mum and I saw how my husband was interacting with my daughter, I realised I'd reached for a gentleman. I had reached for a gentleman because my dad was always a gentleman. He used to, if it was raining, he used to come and park the car up, and he'd come and open the door for us so we wouldn't get too wet. He used to do so many things where he would just be so kind and so caring. And even now, he's the first person to say, come on, love, I'll do that for you. Let me hold you this for you. Sometimes I give him a few jobs. Oh, Dad, will you pump the tyres up for me? Because you just know, like, we've had that relationship for so long where my dad has been this incredible gentleman to me, and we sought that in relationships.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had an absence of a father for a period of time. My dad died when I was quite young, and then my stepfather was very young when he took on that responsibility. He worked really hard, and we have a good relationship now, but in that gap, I lost that, and I didn't know what to look for. And so actually when I bumped into Matt in a nice way, he had to woo me. He had to work really hard to regain what I was living as an independent, because I didn't know what it looked like. And even now, watching him parent our children, I'm like, I don't know if that's what a dad's supposed to do, because I never experienced that. I didn't know that. So, but I can see the value, and then I can trust him when he presents himself in a way that is a good, solid, man of God.
Absolutely. So I think, those of us of mums out there where we perhaps haven't got fathers that are present for whatever reason, it's who else can we draw on? What kind of what positive male role models, male solid relationships can we kind of encourage and instill with our
The local church is really good for that. And if you can find a thriving local church where you can find some positive male role models, maybe you haven't got a dad in the home with you, maybe doing this single life for whatever reason, how you found yourself yourself there. But actually there are some good role models, and it's really important, isn't it, to get your girls with that wide experience. It could be a teacher or a coach in a sport, or but just exposing them to some good, healthy male role models.
So true. So if we were to have a look then at some of the core practical things, obviously we've explored the significance of male relationships and older male relationships, which I don't think is one that people necessarily go to. I wouldn't think of that actually to begin with. That kind of would not be in my thinking. So I think it's really good to consider that. But what other things do you think we can pull out?
I think for me particularly at the moment with having a 10-year-old girl, the kind of early sexualisation of children is huge. So and I guess we can't stop the internet. We can't kind of control the internet, can we?
It's not going anywhere.
Parental controls isn't quite going to cut it, is it? So our children are going to be exposed to that. So it's providing the kind of counterbalance to that. Having non-screen times or days in the week. Allowing our children to be children. Allowing our children to play.
I agree with that. Being children, not encouraging them to be too old too soon.
Sometimes I find it really frustrating shopping with my 10-year-old because all the clothes, they just seem like adult clothes, just smaller sizes. So it's really tricky, that, isn't it? So I think definitely allowing your children to be children, finding opportunities, lots of opportunities for spontaneity and for play, without a doubt. And also, something that I really believe in is encouraging our daughters to kind of be vulnerable, to not be frightened, to be assertive. It's not a sign of weakness to express your emotions. It's actually a sign of strength and courage to step out and be vulnerable and take risks in relationships. So that would be something I think, again, for us as parents, we can model to our girls.
That's great advice, Emma.
Did you have anything, Claire?
Well, I suppose I just want to be able to, if I could, when you've got girls and you are a girl, it's the things that have limited me. There's been so many things that have kept me at times. I felt like a songbird in a cage, if I could explain it like that, where I am a woman and I have, gifts and talents, and people want to use that because you can multitask and you can do this and you get up every day, but you're in this caged environment. I would just want you to help yourself, first of all. Find a way to get out of those things that cage you and keep you living small, because that's not the way God intended you to live. And the natural effect of that would be that you're going to take your kids on an adventure with you, and your girls or your girls are going to see you do that as well. And sometimes the way you get through to that is because you just have to praise your way through it, or you have to get God. You have to just see things in the distance, what you're heading for, but don't let things trap you or enslave you.
Yeah, I love that. I think, one of the biggest things I feel like could really impact females or girls is grace. Grace for themselves, to know that it doesn't matter, I don't have to be perfect. Those girls in the videos, it's pressures of school, it's pressures of work, it's pressures, expectations of how you look, of how you dress, of your relationships. Grace for yourself, because that is the gift of God, that is the gift of Christ, and to not have that is to live short of the gospel. So just have that grace for yourself, but also have that grace for others, because we are just all learning. And I think if we can raise our girls in a culture of grace and just really bringing that for themselves and bringing that for others, we just help them to just grow into what's ahead of them. There you go. I've loved chatting about this with you both. It's been so exciting because we've got daughters and we're invested in this subject. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed this subject as well. If you're looking for more information or you want to find out more, please do head over to our website at promisecollective.co.uk. And in the meantime, we will catch you back on The Mum Show very soon.
Hello parents, don't forget to say hello. We're at promisecollective.co.uk. Bye!